Tell us, how many generations has your family been in Canada?
Well, my parents came in 28, 29 from Scotland. So, and I was the only child, so that was all there was. So we were no other relatives to speak of.
When were you born?
1935 in Toronto. I mean, I was interested in all sorts of things, but I had never known anything about Islam. Certainly when I was in high school, and in fact, what was interesting was that the leader of our little group, when we were at the sort of high school age, he picked up somewhere or other the term Muslim, and Muslim just meant kind of losers. I have no idea where this came from, but this was just a term we kind of used among our little sort of clique of 3 or 4 people, that this was, people who were silly or something. And so I then met Adia at university, and again, first Muslim I'd ever met, and in fact, I guess the first Indian I'd ever met, because there was nobody else around. I mean, it was a very Anglo society. So then over the couple of years that we kind of spent time sort of talking to each other and so on, because we didn't go out or anything, and there really wasn't any suggestion of any kind of relationship. But I guess I fell in love with her and thought this was an incredible person, and I tried to, I guess I wanted to learn if this was going to if anything was going to happen, then I had to understand what it was that Islam was about, because that was one of the main thing, because here was this extraordinarily interesting woman who was unlike anybody I had met. And so then she started telling me about it. I mean, the idea of the one God and the acceptance of all the prophets. I liked I liked all that, because I had been attempting to be a Christian. It hadn't worked. And so the fact that it was non-racial, I mean, I really liked that, because I was kind of, from birth it seems, rather an anti-racist. And I just really found this attractive, and the fact that you could stand up and defend yourself and so on, the art and architecture, all these things. And they still mean a great deal to me now. So the things that I became a Muslim for have persisted. It was a bit of a shock for my parents, I think. And again, because it was going to be a multiracial and in a different religion, it was going to be really quite difficult. So my mother had more trouble, always had more trouble understanding or accepting Islam. My father was non-religious really, so he said as long as I knew what I was doing, and particularly he was more concerned about the multiracial thing, because again there were no multiracial couples around. I mean, that's, there were a handful of us once we got to Toronto. But back in 58, when we at least were allowed to discuss the possibility we might get married in the following year overseas, it took everybody, it took a lot of talking and so on. But my father worried mainly about the racial thing, but he said if you thought it out, and I think he knew Ali particularly, and I think he thought, well, that's a thing that he could visualize doing. I mean, he was the most beautiful girl in the world, and he wanted to, he could see, I guess he could see that their son had wanted to do something different. And I kind of got into it as the story goes on.
Were you trying to straddle two different worlds?
I don't remember feeling out of place. I mean, it was different. I mean, I represented something different, but there wasn't, I never just came across any hostility to do with that. I mean, no, I didn't really discover any kind of hostility in that area.
What about the impression of Islam and Muslims at the time amongst Canadians in general? Did you find that there were a lot of stereotypes that were prevailing?
Well, to start with, nobody knew anything about it. I mean, like my own experience, when Islam was something that had something to do with the Arabs, who were the people who were in kind of beau geste movies or fighting the brave Israelis or something. There was, from Life magazine pictures, the 56 war and so on, about the time I was starting to kind of drift into this connection with Adia. And so I had no impression of them whatsoever. And I don't know there weren't any stereotypes. I mean, otherwise the kind of Hollywood movie things, the veiled princesses and the villainous guys with swords and turbans, which we still have,